Hey everyone, my name is Daniel, I'm an indie game developer and I'm currently working on a shoot 'em up roguelite game called Osore. Today I want to break down how I made the visuals for the game. If you want to watch the devlogs for Osore, the link to the complete series is in the description. So first, let's have a look at the environment first. This means the background, walls and effects around it. The backgrounds in my game aren't too complicated and not too detailed, because the player's focus should be on the gameplay layer and not on the background one. So my first step to create a good looking background is to take a blank canvas and fill a beautiful vibrant color in there. Then I take my simple soft brush and at the top I take a brighter color and simply paint there. Almost the same with the bottom, but this time I take a darker color and again I simply paint a bit there with the soft round brush. Maybe you already noticed that this software I'm using isn't Adobe Photoshop. I use Procreate on my iPad, and I guess if I wouldn't show you my screen and I didn't told you that, you never would have noticed this. In my opinion, you can use whatever software you feel comfortable with to make your illustrations and you come up with a good design no matter which software. Maybe MS Paint isn't the best, but a good classical drawing software is enough. If you don't know a good software that is free or has a low price like Procreate, here you can see a few. But now back to the creation of our background. After filling in the basic colors, I take this watercolor brush from the watercolor brush pack, which you can find in the description. It's completely free and there are a ton of brushes you can choose from. Then I take the color of the opposite side of the one I want to draw on. So when I want to draw on the darker side, I take the color of the lighter side. And vice versa. Now I fill in some texture with this brush. When you're not sure how much texture, just do it, and after a bit of practice, you get a feel for how much texture is good. After the texture with this brush, you can take another watercolor brush and throw a tiny bit more texture in. Another step you can do if you want to is to create a very subtle vignette effect with your darker color. But you need to drop the opacity of that layer down so it's not too visible. Now you have finished the first step of the background creation. But I'll do another thing to create the stylish backgrounds in Osore. You see here all these different elements that are floating around in the background. Let's make some. So in my drawing software I take a hard round brush in white and I just draw some nice looking silhouettes. After I've drawn some of these, I take my watercolor brush from before and I erase bits and pieces at some places of the designs. Then I bring these into Unity and place them around. I also changed the color in Unity and it gives me good results because I originally drew these sprites in white. Then I quickly add parallaxing to these objects so they move slower than objects near to the camera. Lastly, I add particles to the background that fit the overall theme of a level. Now let's get to the gameplay layer, which means the player, enemies, walls and other elements that affect the gameplay. So first, let's get to the creatures in my game. As an example, here I create an enemy. So first I make a nice looking black silhouette and I make a red silhouette for the face. Then I take a fresco brush and with that I draw a bit on clipping mask of the black silhouette layers. Usually I use blue, red and pink for this. After that is done, I take my soft round brush and draw in some light areas in a reddish tone. Then I drop down the size and increase the hardness of the soft round brush. And I again do some highlights, but now some harder and smaller ones. When this is done, I take a small hard round brush and I drew some vein-like things. Then I drop down the opacity of these and I fade them out the less light is there. Lastly, I make a subtle shadow with my soft round brush. Then I just add texture to the red face part with the fresco brush and I do a shadow underneath the face silhouette. This is basically how I create creatures in Osore. I took a similar workflow for creating the player and also when creating the spells, but they have vibrant colors instead of the black reddish tone. The walls are also pretty similar, but here I take one of the watercolor brushes instead of the fresco one. And I don't add the vein-like things and the shadow with the soft round brush. Now let's have a look at the foreground. I don't have many elements there. I only add a few clouds, which I drew using a few dots and fading the clouds out to the bottom with the soft brown brush. But other than that, I only put some light in using soft shapes, and that's it for the foreground. Now we have finished the basic game art. But there's another important layer of art, and that's the user interface, in short UI. So for that I use my basic rules of the gameplay layer, but I invert them a bit. So instead of using black silhouettes, I use vibrant colored silhouettes. That really lets the UI stand out from the dark walls the UI is in front of. Then for the text I either write it by hand or I use the pangolin font, which you can download with a link in the description as well. I also want to let you know that this hand-drawn look of almost everything in the game is not made handcrafted by me with drawing every sprite multiple times. I use a page shader package from the Unity asset store for this, called the all-in-one shader package. The link for this is in the description too. Then I added some basic post-processing like bloom to let bright colors pop more, a vignette and some grain to give it just a tiny bit more texture. Hopefully you learned something new from me. And would you be interested in another video that is about the creation of the animation? Please tell me in the comments below. Then I would highly appreciate when you subscribe to this channel and hit that little bell, so that you don't miss any of these future art or animation tutorials or the devlogs for Osore. See you next time, cheers!